What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. Before we kick it off today, the message of the week. This comes from Gary Vaynerchuk, also known as Gary V. And he once said, if you're a business owner, you have to start thinking like you own a media company. It doesn't matter what business you're in some way, you have to be able to promote for yourself and market for yourself. That will lead us into today's discussion. Some of my favorite things to talk about: entrepreneurship, podcasting, building a podcast, marketing a podcast, and of course, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Before I bring my guest on, make sure you unmute yourself. I can see your little red microphone. And with that, we're zooming all the way to Louisville, Kentucky. Welcoming to the show, Robert Johnstone. He is a former training partner of my brother, Jacob Fox, who's also been on the show. He's been on our side show, the Oddcast, not the podcast, because it's just a little too silly. So our brother's Oddcast, which we do on Instagram Live every Sunday. And Robert was on there about a month ago, and some knowledge was dropped about his podcast network company called Speakeasy Podcast Network, of which he is a partner in, and a couple other things, it looks like, by snooping around his social media pages. So welcome to the show, Robert. Glad to have you.
Hey, Jeremiah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Great to see you again. I know that we had the introduction on the silly podcast that you and your brother are running. That was a wonderful time. I hope he's not dealing with any setbacks. I let loose his secret about his voice.
You know, only a couple blowbacks here and there. Most people are still confused by the whole thing, but yeah, it's funny. I always call that the side show. That's like the not serious show. A few people have been on both, and I'm like, yeah, you can come on like our goofy show. The serious one's on Friday, but you know, with the imposter, we do that on Sunday.
Yeah, not too serious though, right?
Not too serious. No, you still curse and everything, but just a different orientation. So my lighting sucks today. It's really cloudy here. Were you aware that he and I were from Nashville?
No, I had no idea where. Like I said, I thought brother was from Brazil this entire time.
Was from Brazil. So just to give everybody the backstory on that, my brother was teaching sometimes at the school that Robert and he met in Virginia Beach, Virginia, called Kaizen. Right? You were at Kaizen?
Correct. Yep. And then Virginia Beach Jiu-Jitsu changed over there. We both did for a bit.
And what my brother would teach, he would start the classes as if he was Brazilian. I've dropped the accent a few times here on the show, but he cops it better than me. And for a while, Robert thought he was actually Brazilian because of the way he talked when he taught the classes. It's pretty
literally for about funny. At least a year.
It's hilarious.
At least a year, he's a strange, excellent wrestler, excellent teacher too.
All thanks to Uncle Renato.
That's right.
Give me 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I've got some delay here. Boom. There we go. All right, I fixed that. Yeah. Too many buttons going on. Anyway, so I'm curious, one, how did you get into podcasting and media yourself, especially given the message? It's like, that's how I got into it. I was, just opening businesses and running businesses. And for me, I was like, how the fuck do you market? I don't know, like all these terms, and like, we didn't have the budget to do like the mainstream stuff. This is going back, over, 10 plus years now. And when I started to listen to guys like Gary Vaynerchuk talk about, start a podcast, chop it up, distribute, and market for yourself, that's how I got into it. Was it something similar or completely different for you? Were you just passionate about podcasting?
Oh, it's kind of a longer story that I'm going to try to condense my best. So
we got an hour. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So I'll make it clear though. But so I first really started getting into podcasting because of jujitsu, because I was doing jujitsu, and then someone's like, oh, Joe Rogan does jujitsu, and he's a comedian. He commentates for the UFC.
Corallo.
Excuse me. And he has the most I would say arguably the most popular podcast. Not necessarily the OG of podcasting, but certainly the bigger audience, the one in the news all the time, the $100 million Spotify deal, which I'll make my prediction. I think that he will, after this deal's over, it's going to go back to all platforms. Just going to say that. But no, I started listening to his podcast a lot. And then I actually was in the Marine Corps at the time. So, completely different job. I was working on F-18s, and I was teaching how to work on F-18s, and I was teaching some martial arts that all played together. But once I decided to kind of get out, I've always had this knack for marketing, advertising, everything. I remember when I was growing up, like I lived in a really, really small town. So first thing that comes into mind is number one, like we didn't have a Target or a Walmart or anything like that within 50 miles. They did end up putting in a Walmart like 20 miles away from my home. The town had a fair and a festival for it and everything. It was a big deal, right? A big deal. But no, I remember getting like the ads, like the booklets in the mail, and just being fascinated by those booklets, the branding, everything like that. And then, the Super Bowl is the same way. I love football. Don't get me wrong. I'm a Detroit Lions fan, though. So whenever the Super Bowl comes around, you definitely know I don't have a dog in the fight. But I was always very interested in listening to, the commercials over the football team, even as a young kid. So, yeah, all to say that. And of course, Mad Men, kind of like Don Draper over here. Just maybe a quarter of him. But no, once I got out, I was pursuing a college degree. And I wanted to get in business, and then I wanted the specialty to be where my focus was marketing. So I got into marketing, and then I was selling advertising at a local newspaper, which was not a great learning opportunity, but also like just kind of very old school mentality. And I was very fortunate. It's very strange, and this is going to confuse everybody, but I have two business partners. One's name is Robert Sass. He does all of our videography and media work. And then who I started the company with originally, Rob Johnson, not to be confused with Rob Johnstone, but oftentimes is, he already had a lot going on, and he was kind of doing some financial coaching, and we kind of rekindled our friendship and got back together. I was helping him sell this financial coaching, but we really didn't have the capital to really go anywhere with it. So we started getting into digital marketing because he was getting a lot of feedback from the companies that we were working with. They're like, hey, we don't really understand your financial services, nor can we afford them, but we really like how you're marketing this company on the digital landscape. Can you give us some tips? Rob Johnson, being the forever opportunist and entrepreneur that he was like, yeah, I certainly can. And then that kind of led to us getting into our other company, the kind of father company that we have, umbrella company over Speakeasy Podcast Network, Wayne Media Group. And we were doing digital marketing, Google advertising, website development, and then with Rob Sass, the content development for our clients on a really, really local level. At the time, we had our own podcast going on, and that was a good lead generator for us. I know Rob has an episode called like $29 garbage SEO, because if you're in business, you are getting the emails and the phone calls saying, hey, we're going to rank you number one on Google, which isn't necessarily a realistic thing. And they're probably talking about Google AdWords, but then also the master classes on Facebook that say, hey, this course for today only is going from $10,000 all the way down to $29 one time only. So, a lot of people were upset about that. He was tracking on that. Then we had individuals who were like, hey, we'd really like to start a podcast too. You see how it helped your local business. Can you help us get into that? And, at the time we were already thinking about, we're like, what, podcasting, it's helping us tremendously. And there's all these opportunities that a lot of individuals are not thinking about when it comes to this platform. They're very much, okay, well, it's a podcast, huge audience, audio, some video elements, Joe Rogan, monetize, get advertising dollars and entertain. But we started to realize, how all individuals can kind of bypass that need for broadcasting background, that need for media support or broadcasting support, and really kind of build out their own brand and their own authority, even on the local level with podcasting. So of course, Rob, once again, where I'm like, I don't know, man, this seems like just another thing to add on. Rob was very much like, we can help you with a podcast. And then that kind of led one thing into another. And then we decided, hey, let's expand on these services. So for the past 2.5 years, we've been building up services to help individuals who are podcasting, not only save their time, but kind of get a good head start on it. Kind of, what's the word? Gather their goals and their objectives out there, and then coach and consult them, to help them get a good start of success, help them get consistent, and then kind of take care of all the back end information and really give them a good marketing plan too. So that's the long-winded answer right there.
No, that's great. And that really feeds into like everything the show is about and entrepreneurship itself. I think it's a meandering journey, and you set out with a certain intention, and maybe things don't play out the way you thought they would, but kind of always the way you expected them.
For sure. Yeah. You always have this kind of, 30,000 foot overview of where you want to see your business going. And it's important to keep that strategy in mind. But what I've recognized, and I struggle with daily, and I know that we all do, and even with our employees too, because there's such a big part. We've been so fortunate for our company to, go from the 3 of us to now, we're going to be hiring somebody else. We're about a team of 12 right now. And, to really navigate into that realm, and still keep those top level objectives in line, but now receiving a lot of help from some extremely talented and intelligent people on our team. It's been quite the thing.
That's great. All right, we're going to take our first break, and I want to pick back up with that, especially the employee part, because it's a big thing these days when we come back. So everybody hang tight. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, everybody, welcome back. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. Today, we're zooming to Louisville, Kentucky, close to my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee, which I left many, many, many years ago. Talking to Robert Johnstone. Again, he's an old friend of my brother's, old training partner in the wonderful art of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And we were just talking in the first segment about his kind of meandering journey in marketing and media, and how he ended up with several business partners putting together this company called Speakeasy Podcast Network, which is also, I wanted to ask you about Wayne Media Company.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? I wasn't sure if it was okay. I was like, oh, it's this. Did we talk about that?
It's completely okay. So with Wayne Media Group, we do local marketing for small businesses with a very kind of personal approach to things. By that, I mean, we handle things like we'll take on an entire company's, freight company, for example, a roofing company is a perfect example. We'll take on their entire social media management and advertising. We'll take on anything Google related, handle their Google My Business page, which is really, really important for local search and local exposure. We'll handle video and photography for them. We're really kind of doing all this digital assets for them, also helping with their overall marketing strategy from a holistic level. And what we really wanted to accomplish, which is why we don't leave too much our footprint outside of Louisville or outside of where our main office is up in Brighton, Michigan, kind of like as far as Detroit, those are kind of our main areas, because we want to, rather than be and I know there's benefits of this. I know there's benefits of outsourcing and also, working with partnerships with other media groups and then getting a national approach. But we want everything to be very custom, and we want our brands to be spoken with storytelling mode. So we really, really focus on local areas. We expand into another area. We hope we do soon. We'll bring that office online and start serving businesses in whatever city we end up in. But also too, I just want my clients to be able to not just feel like we're a phone call away or email, which is primary means of communication with most digital agencies once those contracts start. But hey, you got 3 touch points here, and they're all real people. And one of them, at least at the very minimum, is going to be knocking on your door and coming in there and, helping you develop content, at least quarterly to that business. It's important for us to see that. So that's kind of what we do as Main Media Group. And because we had a main media group is why we decided to expand into the podcasting. So Speakeasy itself, we have 3 studios now, and we do have in-person services where people can actually come to our podcast studio and get that white glove experience where they record and we take care of everything else. But then all the remote services for Speakeasy. So,
nice.
Yeah, that's how they kind of all play in together. I hope that kind of answered everything you were asking.
Yeah, no, that's great. I wanted to pick back up with what you were talking about with employees and what you were just talking about keeping it small and super intimate. Based off of my, I'm coming up on my 100th episode of the Entrepreneurial Web and doing a bunch of shows with Jacob as well, and all the discussions I have with business owners, entrepreneurs, and people in marketing. That the hardest thing to scale really is intimacy, right? You can scale production of cheeseburgers, you can scale, there's so many things you can scale, but offering that intimacy where your clients feel like they're talking to you or one of your partners when they're talking to one of your employees or somebody outsourced. So the real challenge in going big and going national or international is making sure that needle moves along with your growth in business. And I think where you're at occupies, I think you guys have really found a unique and underserviced corner of the market. I know here, I've thought about it where we're in Brooklyn. There's so many small businesses. And like I was saying, when we first started, we didn't have the budget for, this was, going back to like 2011. And then again, in 2015, we opened 4 businesses in like 9 months, and we had budget, but just not the marketing budget to do what was available in terms of marketing at that point. And the idea of like doing your own podcast and being your own social media manager, especially for an old fart like me who didn't know anything about that, there was no middle ground. And I feel like that's the kind of area you're occupying in terms of marketing, where it's more tangible and accessible for the 50,000 a year in revenue to like 2 million a year in revenue business. They're scrapping, they're just trying to get this together, and they don't have $1 million to give to a media company for marketing services.
They don't, and not just that, but a lot of times you're exactly right. It's a couple things. Like, number one, when we built these companies, Rob's strategic vision wasn't to not just, we want to serve clients well, which helped us with this approach, but the other part is we want to build jobs for people. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the main thing, not just jobs to where it's 1099, but where our employees have a very good culture, a place to be. Even though that's been obviously difficult to navigate with COVID, we've still been trying to build up our company culture, but then also too, just to give them good benefits and a good, happy place to be, and, the feeling that they belong somewhere and they want to be somewhere. And then obviously when we have that type of culture within our company, then, that translates to creating a culture that goes to our clients too. So that's been really helpful. Sorry, I'm trying to backtrack. I know I just went off on that, but I'm thinking as far as how could you repeat that question? I'm trying to get it at all, get that beginning part back to myself here.
Oh, I don't think there was a question. I mean, I'd asked about Wayne Media Group. I was just acknowledging that I think it's really great that you all saw that niche in the market. Like, you're always trying to distinguish yourself, right? I've had a gentleman on this show a couple of times who also trains as well. And he said something to me early on. He said, you have to look at your competition and figure out what they're not offering. And just like wedge yourself in, which is very jujitsu, was have to escape the rib and try to slide into that little space and just distinguish yourself. Like, you really have to distinguish yourself. You don't have to be, if you want to be, and people build out these companies that way from jump to be like this massive company that takes over the world. But most of us are just, like I said, we're scrappy and we're just like getting in there. So I feel like you've done that as a service, and that will help the companies that are trying to do that within their own competitive realm. So if you're a restaurant, or you decided a roofing company, you've done this yourself, it's proven, it's worked, and now you're offering that to other companies. I think it's a great move. And I think, again, I just think it's a very underserviced sector of the market where you've got like big budget marketing. You've got the low grade stuff where guys are spending like, $50 a month on IG ads, taking pictures on their iPhone. But then there's this huge realm in the middle, and people kind of don't know how to navigate that, and they don't know how to market it. They don't know how to create a service like yours is. So I think it's really great. I think it's a place where an area for growth. Like more people could get into that, where people are like, I want to start a digital marketing company, and like that could mean so many things, right? Like
it could be an endless number of things.
Yeah.
But then, with and I love all those points that you bring up. Like that's the way we want to serve our clients, is be that kind of middle person, and then help them as they evolve, like act as a fiduciary and say, hey, if you end up needing to go even higher, we'll join you along with this journey, or at least get you connected with, the biggest media company out there if you start expanding. But, a lot of areas, the reason that we started Speakeasy, we saw that need, but also too, we saw how much people can do with podcasts outside of, just as I mentioned earlier, putting out an audio file and trying to get advertisers. We saw so many other areas of growth that really kind of take that smaller company who can have a limited budget and expand them into these opportunities that the bigger companies are spending a lot of money on. And that's the power of podcasting, even at a small and local level, is, if you recognize all the capabilities, which I love to talk about, at least some of the key ones, then you're really able to take that platform, build on it, build your authority, build up a ton of additional content, and utilize it as networking, and just really get your name out there and stand out with your competition for very, very affordable price. In some senses, of course, we have services that we offer to companies who are doing it, but even at a small level, from a grassroots budget, you can get into podcasting. You can get on your iPhone, you can download Audacity, you can take some pictures, and you can really, really get your voice out there. And that's a great marketing opportunity for small businesses to stand out.
And like you said, on a budget, you can do that pretty inexpensively.
For sure. Even when you start getting up into the higher scales of podcasting, you can still optimize on a budget that wouldn't have been there before, and get a much wider reach than, really what people thought was possible with the budget that you're on.
Yeah. We're going to take another break in a moment, but when we come back, I would like you to talk more about some of those key elements that Speakeasy offers that you think would be beneficial to any business that kind of falls into that realm.
Not just Speakeasy, but just what you can be doing. If you have a podcast out there and you're doing successfully on your own, or you're thinking about getting into, I'd love to touch on some of those things that just open the minds up to say, hey, here's what else we should be doing with this platform.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break. And then when we come back, we'll do that. All right.
Sounds good, man.
All right. We'll be back in a few, everybody. Hang tight. All right, everybody. Welcome back again. If you're just tuning in, this is the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox, joined today by Speakeasy Podcast Network partner, Robert Johnstone. Lots we've unpacked already about marketing on a large scale, on a small scale, a little DIY. And now Robert's going to give some pointers here that he thinks are valuable. If you're a business owner, if you're afraid of podcasting and you want to get started, you realize the value in it, or maybe you're podcasting already and you don't know how to take it to that next level, Robert's got some great tips for us.
Yeah. Can you hear me, by the way? I switched up my audio just a little bit. That's a little bit clearer. So the first thing that I kind of want to talk about, I don't want to sound like a repeat of everybody else, but of course, the easiest way, the best way to start your podcast is to start your podcast, right? So to just kind of start recording. I know one thing that's helped me with my speaking, and the podcast that I take part in is recording myself a lot. I'll be down the street and I'll have internal notes. Nobody should ever listen to them. They'll probably put me in a mental hospital, but at least it's helped me with my cadence a little bit and, with my energy with podcasting. So, that's one way you can start it, is to start an internal dialogue, an internal memo, and then listen to yourself too. That's the hardest part. It was for me, of course, is to hear my own voice. It took a long time, but I promise it's really weird, but not everybody in the world can have the worst voice in the world, even though we all think that we have the worst voice in the world. And once you kind of hear it a little bit and you adapt to it and you get used to it, I promise you'll get used to that. So starting it is easy. A main thing is to stay consistent with it. Try to record something every single week if you can, even if you're not going to distribute it right away, but and not put too much worry on the front end, but also to have good goals and objectives with your podcast. And to recognize one of the most important things that you can do when you're podcasting, just as I'm sure you've done yourself, Jeremiah, is to try to recognize right away who are the individuals that you want to speak with. Your podcast can't be about everything, and it can't be for everybody. I can never remember who actually says this phrase, but it's one of my favorite, and I repeat a lot, is that if you build something that everybody likes, nobody's going to love it. And I think that that's very, very powerful, because we get a lot of individuals who are asking, like, hey, what do you want your podcast to be about? And they say, well, just a little bit of everything. Talk about culture, talk about money, talk about music, talk about my business, things like that. I'm like, okay, well, your family will really enjoy that. That's your audience. But what we really want to do.
Mom's going to be so proud of you.
Yeah, she'd love to get that update. You're a busy guy, a busy girl. So yeah, put that out there for them to listen to it. But no, you have to kind of signal in on an audience if you want long-term success with a podcast. You have to be willing to say, hey, here's the persona that I'm trying to reach out to, so I can craft my message to speak to those individuals. And the more niche you get, at least on crafting that audience, that message, the more you'll expand into other audiences too. It's just a good starting point. And of course, you're going to expand upon that. You really want to develop a good audience base by making sure that your message is accurate and speaks to them. So if you're trying to gain more customers, for example, for your unique business that has one-time customers and not necessarily any, retained business, you might want to recognize that, find a way to speak to those customers, but then realize that they're not going to be a long-term audience. So you might have to shape your goals around that a little bit different, and recognize that, yes, you can create a lot of volume with that type of message, but you're not going to have a long-term audience base from the individuals who listen in one or two times, and then because you've built authority, get in front of you. But if you have something that's very targeted and niche, then you can build audience with it, expand on your business if this is a business opportunity for you too, and then gain an audience at the same time. So those are some of the more basic things I would say, is to, number one, start recording something, and start recording today. And number two, to develop an audience. And when you are able to develop an audience, that's in tune is going to help you develop your message a lot better of what you actually want to put out there. So,
yeah, no, that's great. And to your point, something that wasn't obvious to me that helped out tremendously was, I started this one in particular with an emphasis on entrepreneurship and small business and marketing, which all tie in together. But that's a very large echo chamber, right? There's like everybody and their grandmother is trying to get in on that right now. So exposing maybe like one other side of yourself that's a little bit more personal, that will allow you to connect with people. And so it was funny, I just started talking about jujitsu, and like had a number of guests on that were jujitsu practitioners as well. And that would just kind of it stuck and it just took off. And then other BJJ people were like, oh, this is a great show. You talk about business and jujitsu. And I was like, huh. And so we'll talk about jujitsu on the last segment. Sure. But we always save that best for last. But it was just like this thing. So it's like you said, if you got a business selling, jewelry, and all you do is like try to use it as a lead generator for jewelry, talking about selling jewelry, it could really be like wah, 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 where everybody sounds like the Peanuts teacher, Whereas you certainly should talk about jewelry, but like what other component of your life and your fascination with jewelry, your passion for it, hopefully you're passionate and that's why you're in that business, is there that you could talk about that will connect people to kind of like that big slippery slope of the top of the funnel, where they just kind of like the foot sweep, the sasai, and they go right in,
I love that comparison, because it makes me think about a sector of an industry that can benefit greatly from podcasting, and that's real estate agents.
Yeah.
Because as a real estate agent, you're always trying to stand apart in a sea of many, especially in today's market, where you have, just in Louisville a few months ago, we had like 5,000 agents that were actively trying to sell less than 1,000 listings, right? And trying to find them. That's even at that small, that's a very hard area to stand out. But on your point, Jeremiah, if you bring your personality into that, and if you have something else to talk about that, you can make a big factor of your show, or even sometimes your main factor if you're really, really passionate, then yes, that will trickle into building authority and building a brand and building recognition that will trickle into your business as well. So a real estate agent, there's not only are there not that many listings and so many real estate agents, but there's a lot of real estate agents who are trying to podcast. And the ones I've seen successful so far, especially when they're trying to get customers, clients for themselves, are the ones who are going outside of the real estate realm and talking about ghost stories or college sports or, a handful of other things that they can build an audience and still help that audience out with too. But,
funny story about that. I ended up with a show on this network because of a guy's real estate show. Shout out to Jeff Goodman. He does a show called Rediscovering New York on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday at 7, I believe. So it was just 2 years ago. His show he's a real estate agent and a very good one, but his show does not talk about selling real estate. He does virtual tours of neighborhoods, New York City neighborhoods. He's a New York native. There's tons of neighborhoods here. So we just like each week is a new neighborhood, or maybe like I think he did like Grand Central Station once. So he'll pick like a really iconic place, but he'll go neighborhood by neighborhood by neighborhood. He'll bring on an historian who could talk about the neighborhood for like half the show. And then he'll bring somebody local who's like kind of involved in the neighborhood to talk about the current, state of things. And so they did my neighborhood of Windsor Terrace 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And I got, he was a friend of a friend and asked me to come on the show. And I was the one on the second half talking about like what things are like today. And I was fascinated by the whole thing. And we started talking afterwards, and the executive producer was there as well. And he was like, do you want a show? You got to, he was like, you got a great face for radio, kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was like, I don't have anything on entrepreneurship, and clearly you know something about that. It'd be great if you were interested in it. But I was definitely talking about like, this is fantastic. This is amazing how you're doing one thing, but it totally leads to the other. And Jeff was saying like, once he started this show, he started maybe like 9 months before me. Like it took a little time, but it really caught and helped his business tremendously. And he's not selling. That's the thing. Like all these people want to sell their shit. And it's like, yeah, but everybody's selling. Like you said, those silly ads, those sleazy ads. Well, it's 10 grand. Now you can get my financial coaching for $29.99. Like, don't be that guy.
Terrible.
Yeah. He just talked like with such passion. You could just like feel it coming out of him. I mean, like you said, it established this level of authority. Like this guy not only knows your building, he knows your neighborhood. He knows the history. He knows like every crazy thing about it. And it's just, that's the thing that really stuck with me. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't think I've accomplished that yet, but we're having fun anyways.
Yeah.
Paralo.
Well, I love that too. It kind of leads into those three things I wanted to discuss quickly. And you kind of hit on, a couple of them, but there's three things that I really try to, especially on the local level, try to push podcasters to recognize the power that they can have with their podcasting. And one of the first things that you mentioned is the networking capabilities of it, the business to business networking, about how you are able to now get in front of people that you wouldn't have had the authority or the social capital to get in front of before, because you own the platform.
Yep.
So just as that individual found you and got you on the network, he utilized the show to make a strategic partnership. And when we're doing this together, Jeremiah, I'm learning so much about you. You're learning so much about me. Podcasting is not fake, so we can really tell who we are. And it really is, if you're in like a lead generation group, for example, this is the best one-on-one you're ever going to have, especially if you're the one hosting it, because everybody who's part of it gets to leave with a tangible, deliverable item of marketing. If you have a real estate show and you bring on another real estate agent or a title company, you're going to build a relationship with them. And now you're giving them 30 plus minutes of content and more to push out on their own marketing platforms. And that's an incredible thing to be thankful for. So we've seen companies that have been able to, use that stepping ladder effect and climb from, this relatively unknown individual to now they're talking to people with other podcasts in national appeal to be able to have them on their show. And it's a really, really good way to build, your brand and your recognition. So that networking side's been really powerful. And then on to the other side, content. Podcasting is, in my opinion, the king of content for small businesses. And they'll explain why. If you do 15 minutes of a podcast once a week, you can take out audio clips. You can take out still images of you and your guest. You can leave cliffhangers on your social platforms. You can leave video clips on your social platforms with what I call points of passion, where basically you said something organically, and now you get to push that, show your authentic self in a video clip, which engages better on our social platforms to dozens and dozens and thousands of people, hopefully. And the shareability with the network side too. Now you have all this content from your own company that's going out that way. There's a transcription that can be written down to a blog itself, and we'll talk about the benefit of that even more in a second. But then as you build up this library, you're going to start realizing this was a big eye opener for me. I'm actually a little bit smarter than I thought it was. I know a couple of things more. I just never listened to myself. But if I go back and I recognize, what I have said or what I've learned from my guests, now I can expand more on that in the future. And then finally, too, what we found out is that there's tremendous search engine optimization benefits with podcasting. As we met, and search engine optimization, for those who don't know, it's ability to be found higher up on Google rankings and then within podcast rankings too. So with that, you're getting a transcription, you're getting a ton of backlinks through the hosting platforms that are directed back to your website. So podcasting is a really, really good way to build local search authority for your company as well. There's just a few of the podcast benefits that I want to push out there to let small businesses know that they can achieve and really, really, in a lot of ways, make this the center of their marketing plan.
I love it. It's something that I've spent like 2 years now working on. And I think it's important to point out too, with all marketing, it's not always like instant ROI. It's not like you put it out, you put the content out and like immediately you start, ramping up business. It takes a little time. And I'm in the thick of it, but it's also a lot of fun. It's like they say about Jujutsu, like Jujutsu should be fun. If it's not fun, like, what are you doing it for? And I think the same is true of podcasting. Like, I have so much fun doing it. It's just like this. It's like jujitsu. You go in for an hour, you come out and you're like, I feel different. Like I feel that way every time I do a show. And if you're not having fun, you need to reassess and evaluate like what's happening.
Absolutely. I would say a recommendation for podcasting is that you want to podcast. I would say that that's like one of the first ones. If you don't want to podcast and you're not passionate to be on here, then it really is going to be hard for you to do. Yeah. On another point, I think it's important to remember too, as you utilize this as a marketing tool, if you're too focused on seeable ROI, stuff that can be tracked exactly back, okay, well, this individual saw my podcast and then they clicked on this link and then I made a sale because of it. You're going to sell yourself short, but you're also not going to have fun anymore. And you're going to miss all of the other opportunities that completely went by you because you were only paying attention to just the numbers. Those numbers are very important. But even right here, Jeremiah, there's an opportunity that in the future, I may send another guest your way. I might send somebody else that's going to work with your business. Or you might say, hey, I know somebody who wants to, get into podcasts or get into marketing, and I think it'd be a really good fit for Robert's company. Or something else that might happen is I might have an individual on here as a guest, and then we might say, hey, there's some really good collaboration opportunities in here. Maybe there's an additional service that we can build together that works together with both of our businesses. And then just from that education standpoint, those moments of insights might lead you to say, hey, I just recorded this. Let's turn this into a PDF, another marketing tool, or put this on YouTube.
Yeah.
So,
all right, we're going to take our
benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right, we're gonna take one last break and come back, and then we'll get into the real fun stuff. Boha, that jujitsu. So hang tight, everybody. Ooh, we'll be right back. All right, everybody, wrapping it up today. We're going to spend this last portion talking about one of our favorite things, both of us really enjoy. And clearly, like I mentioned earlier, many of my listeners and people that engage with the show through social media as well are quite fond of jiu-jitsu and martial arts. You were talking earlier about coming to the, when you started podcasts, not just the part where you're like, oh, I want to talk about everything, but even when you kind of narrow in on what you want to talk about, you don't know how to start. You don't know what to do. It's just like, oh my God. And you were talking about having a strategy, like just a basic outline and structure. I knew when you were saying that, I was thinking, man, this is was Jiu-Jitsu 101, because it's all about strategy. It's all about having a plan of attack and making the match or whatever play out that way, doing everything you can to because there's so much chaos, like life in jiu-jitsu and business and podcasting. There's like so much chaos can happen that you kind of have to have this strategy and like really stick to your guns and hope you come out perseverance. That's not the word. Well, anyways, you get the point. You always understand what I was trying to say. I'm going to do the whole last segment in Portuguese English too. Corralo.
Are you? No. I cannot track. I can track with you on that, but man, I cannot do that myself. My accents are defensive. But you and your brother have pulled off. But I mean, I love that you say that, that comparison of having a jiu-jitsu strategy. And one thing I'll say is, and you've been purple belt, correct?
Yeah.
So you've been doing this long enough too. Is eventually if you never put together a strategy, it's always going to be difficult, and you're always going to be moving from technique to technique. And what you're going to be known in the gym as is one of those guys who's trying something different every single day. That's really flashy. But they're
going to call you You're going to be the Hess round. The guys was going to call you the Hess round.
All right. But once you really develop kind of your basis of your strategy, then just like the podcasting, for me, what I realized is I'm not a world champion. I'm not as competitive as I used to be, but now I've been doing this long enough. I have my strategy. It's just second nature for me. Like I go into the jiu-jitsu mats now. I go into the dojo. My head is clear, and it's because I focus so long on developing my base, my strategy, that now it's more of a physical process on repeat, a habit, a habitual process, than it is a mental process. Now I'm able to just go in there and compete steps, and for as as an entrepreneurial guy and business guy yourself, your mind's never clear. Like there's so many variables. Like we're just thinking all day. Like, okay, well, should we do this, or this? What direction is that going to lead us into? If I make this, if I say this thing to that person, that could potentially change my business trajectory for the next 100 years or whatever. It's going to affect my children. So it's really, really hard to clear your head. And what I've realized is, just like with podcasting, if you develop that strategy in jiu-jitsu, eventually you get to go in there and you get to clear your head. You get to be empty, and that's really nice.
Yeah, like empty the cup. That was what the bow was for. Yeah.
I'm having a couple of mic difficulties real quick. Can you see
that's good. You're a little boxy, but the choppiness went away. So let's just roll with that for the because now you get to share the heel stuff. You get to tell the heel important stuffs about what the guys was learned from jiu-jitsu, from the days in the favelas with the Gracies and with the Machados. What other stuff she was learned from the guys that was help you clear the heads?
Sorry, I have 1 second, Jacob. I'm still having some issues with my setup. So
no, it's all right.
Give me about 1 minute. Phil, keep talking in your accent for everybody.
Yeah, right. You guys, this is what everybody was come to see. They want you to see the heel Jeremiah, the descendant from the Uncle Hanach. So for those of you that aren't aware of Renato Lahanja, that is where all the silliness comes from. Yeah, I can hear you. It's a little choppy again, but. You still there? can you hear me? It was like the one commercial we would watch as kids. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Nice. Yeah. There you go. Ooh.
There you go. Perfect. Don't know what happened.
Got the sexy voice back. I was talking about Uncle Hanach, and you would turn it on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. 27 world champ. 28.
I think might be 28 at this point.
Retired.
So we got 3 minutes left. One more like just nugget of knowledge from training. Like I know you're big into leadership and you like touched on that briefly. Like just something the parting words to leave all my millions of students with.
You know, if I could say it, and I hope it's not on repeat, but it's very, very true. Just like with this business business and jiu-jitsu. One thing I think about, even on this infancy of it, of me getting into business, of going through the Marine Corps, for a long time, and then really throwing myself at this with luckily some very, very, very intelligent teachers and mentors with Rob Johnstone and the rest of the team, and these guys who are here just taking on the creative, is that to gain the skills in both of them, you just have to keep going. You have to go get beat up a little bit, and you have to go through the emotional turmoil, which is still happening on the business side, and way, way, way less on the jiu-jitsu side. I have no emotional turmoil when it comes to jiu-jitsu anymore. I know that if I just keep showing up every single day on the business side, on the development side, on serving my employees and my clients, those mistakes that get made, those times where we didn't choose the right path, we didn't choose the right technique, we're just going to learn from them, and those failures, they're ultimately going to become our success points if we just show up every single day to work, and we show up every single day on the mats. That's what I would say.
That's beautiful, man. It's very well said.
Thank you.
I was just reading somebody, I don't know, it might have been Jocko or somebody like that, and they were saying, it's about longevity. No, you know who it was? Tom DeBlas from Ocean County BJJ. And he was like, it's about the people that last, like the people that last, that make it through all the bullshit are the ones who are really successful. Like everybody else just peters away. So if you're that guy, if you're going to just slip in and slip out, like nobody really cares. You could do a couple cool things, but like the guys that really like weather the storm, that's like, he was saying like that's really who gets the badge of success. And I think what you were saying, right. What you were saying was right in line with that. Cool. Well, we're gonna have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for listening and tuning in today. Tune in next week, Friday at noon. Have a great weekend, everybody. Peace out.